Hi guys, it's STRIBBERS and welcome to another episode of PGR2 Road to Platinum. We're up to episode 35 now, and we've just completed the Track Special series and unlocked the Extreme series. So we're really getting down to the business end of this game now with the last couple series to do. So we've got a timed run, an overtake, a street race and a one-on-one to do. So let's jump into the garage to have a look at the cars in this class. So to start off this series, we've got the Ford GT40 and also the Porsche GT2. So the Ford GT40, if you look at the stats, it's not a bad car. Those stats are pretty decent when you look at it, but when you actually drive this car, it is quite some distance off the other cars in this class. This is the worst car in the class. In terms of acceleration, in terms of handling, it's just behind all the rest. And the other starter car is the Porsche GT2, which is actually not too bad to use. For one of the starter cars, it's pretty decent. There is another Porsche in this class, the 959, which unfortunately isn't competitive at all due to its acceleration. It says it's won off full acceleration, as are all the other cars in this class, but this really does fall behind on acceleration when you drive this. So I'd say the Ford GT40 and the Porsche 959 you can't use for any events on Platinum, unfortunately. So that leads us on to the better cars in this class. We've got the Ascari KZ1, very good car, probably up there with class leading acceleration. The only thing that lets it down is it does understeer a lot, making it a bit difficult to drive, and it does fall behind some cars in the corners because of that. And we've also got the Jaguar XJ220, which is, I'd say it's strong. It's a strong car, but not the strongest. It's got sort of decent acceleration, very good top end, and average handling. So it's a decent car, but it's by no means the best car in this class. And we've also got the two Ferraris, the F40 and the F50, which do compete for the top spot in this class. The F40 is probably the quickest car in a straight line in the class. Very, very powerful. Decent handling as well, but it does tend to power slide a lot. So it's quite difficult to control, which may mean that you do fall behind the F50, as this is definitely the best car in the class. It's not got class leading acceleration, but it can certainly keep up with the other cars in a straight line. But through the corners, this thing just wins every time. It doesn't understeer, it doesn't oversteer, barely power slides, it just sticks to the road. And it is the best car in this class, so we're going to be using that for the timed run. First event in Chicago, so it's 3 minutes 27 is the target. And if you look at this track, it's a very strange track. It's just straights followed by right angles, basically all the way around. So I actually found myself getting a bit lost on what corner I was on this, because it just seems to go on forever, just looping backwards and forwards, especially this bit coming up. It just go from one straight to the next, one end of the city to the next, and turn around and come back again. So it's a bit of a weird track. I did actually try both cars out on this one, and I think the F50 definitely is the one to use, just due to the amount of corners. It's just easier to drive. Even if you master the F40, I'd say this one does go around corners better. No drama at all, so this is going to be the one to use. But it's definitely between the F50 and the F40, the best cars in the class. Then I'd say there's sort of the Ascari, the Jaguar XJ220 and the Porsche GT2 are sort of fighting for that third spot. I guess they're all similar in a way, they've got their strengths. Porsche is probably the best at handling out of those three. Ascari is the best acceleration, and the XJ220 is sort of a middle ground for both. But that would make the top 5 up, the two Ferraris and those 3 cars I've just mentioned, and then we've got the Porsche 959 and the Ford GT40, which aren't competitive and you can't really use them for Platinum, unfortunately. But we are on the final straight for the second lap, or for the first lap should I say, and we did hit the barrier coming around that last corner, which is a little bit annoying. But we do a 143.3 pretty much, which is good enough. So if we can replicate that lap again, then we should be fine. As I've said, this track does go on forever. You feel like you're driving this track for an eternity. Very odd layout, but shouldn't have too many difficulties. Once you learn the track as best you can. For example, on this bit you want to come to the left hand side of the bridge, so you can swing into the right of this corner. Because if you go to the right hand side of the bridge, it leaves you less time to try and swing over to the left to cut into that corner. And there is another example of the bridge splitting later on, and you have to choose which partition to go down as well. I think it's after we come past this right-hander, we come onto another bridge where it splits, which I could have taken that a lot quicker there, and I could have taken that a bit closer to the apex. And here we want to stick to the left of this partition here. As you can see, the braking zone there. You lose too much time going to the right-hand side of the bridge there, because it doesn't help you out with the corner, because it's still quite a tight turn, so it doesn't really help you out. So the inside of that bridge definitely is the one to go. And we're coming to the sort of end of this race now. We can fly through this section and this little right hand corner, making sure to go wide and braking before that little crest bit there, which leads us onto the final straight. We've only got about 5 seconds left now, but we do that lap probably a second quicker. I think that was a 1:42 that time. Definitely possible to go quicker around that than I did, but there's an example of how to do it on Platinum. So 3 seconds cleared that by, which is very comfortable really, so that's quite nice. Which leads us on to an Overtake, which is in Chicago as well. So the first couple of events have been in Chicago, and we're going to give the F40 a little test drive here. Very good car to use, definitely worth trying. I mean, for ease, if you want to get every platinum medal easily, you're going to use the F50 for every race. There's just no doubt about it. But you can use other cars in this class, which is the beauty of it. There's probably 5 cars in this class, the ones I've mentioned, that you can get platinum medals with, depending on the event. Some are stronger than others, obviously. Getting a little bit of slowdown through that corner. But as usual, on Platinum we've got 7 cars to overtake. And you will see evidence of this car being a little bit harder to control. You see the back end just wants to come out there on this F40, so you've got to really manage that throttle well. Yeah, and through the corners, this has worse brakes and also does understeer a little bit. If it doesn't start power sliding, it does tend to understeer. As you can see, they're having to correct that little wobble of the back end. So you've really got to be careful with the throttle input on this thing, otherwise it'll bite you. But that being said, crashing into the corner there. That being said, in a straight line, this thing is pretty brutal. Struggles off the line a little bit, does spin the wheels up slightly off the line, but once it gets going, it's really got a punchy low end acceleration. We're able to overtake this Lotus around the outside there, so that's 3 cars done. Just 2 minutes 20 left. Around this corner to try and overtake the Vauxhall. As again, you saw how twitchy this car is. It's so much less stable than the F50. So it's an experience to drive, definitely harder to master. But on the mini-map we can see the gap now between 4 cars we've just overtaken and the next 3 to overtake. I can't even see them at the end of the straight here. Forced to go to the right hand side of this little partition, and we can weave over to the left. Get that corner nicely in there. Not the quickest through there, but good enough. Always find this corner difficult to judge as well. This long sweeping left hand corner. But again, we're getting some slowdown in the frames here. So whenever we have the track packed with cars, it always happens. Usually when there's 8 cars in a street race, or for example here we've got 8 cars, including the one I'm driving, in an overtake, and we misjudge that corner completely, not braking early enough and power sliding into the barrier. So that's a couple of times we've hit the barrier there, and on exactly the same corner as the first lap, it starts to be a bit twitchy on the exit of that corner, having to really manage that throttle, make sure we don't spin the back end out. But we've done 5 out of 7 cars with just under a minute to go, and the front bonnet there, or the boot, or whichever one it is in this car, is flying up there when we brake. That's quite funny. You can see it just flapping up, and we do hit the barrier again in the same point, but luckily these two cars are right next to each other, which means we can fly past them. 40 seconds left and I'll skip it to the end, so very comfortable actually. So looking at that, you could probably use any car you'd like in that. Wouldn't recommend the Ford GT40, but that's quite an easy overtake. Looking at the Kudos, we get 4 6s there. 6666. Not a satanic channel, I promise. But we move on to the third event, which is a street race in Chicago. And if we can get it to load up, I think I might have clicked on the wrong button there. Yep, as we're in the garage now. So I think we're going to use the F40 again, was my choice for this race. Again, we could probably use some other cars, but I will use some other cars when the time's right for different races. I think the hardest opponent in this race was the Jaguar XJ220. And as you can see here off the line, you see the difference, that Ford GT40 is getting dropped there, whereas all the other cars are sort of similar off the line. We managed to actually get around there very nicely indeed, cutting off most of the pack, leaving us right behind this XJ220, which is a very, very weird looking car. Very weird styling and very unique. There's not really many cars that look like that, but we do manage to get ahead of him actually. Literally on the second corner, I think it was, which means we've just got to defend this now. 3 laps of this track, so it's not a short track by any means, but the AI do drive the Jaguar quite well. Certain cars they do and certain cars they don't, and I've tried the Jag and I really don't get on with it. I don't really think it's particularly strong in many areas. It's got very good top end, but that doesn't come into play that often. Its mid-range acceleration's pretty average, doesn't stand out too much, and the handling's not brilliant either. It does understeer a bit, not massively, but it does feel a little bit like a boat to drive. Well, when you do drive it, you'll see how wide it is. And I tried to take that corner perfectly by sweeping into the left with full wheel lock and just misjudged it slightly, hitting the inside of the barrier. I'm not doing very well this episode for clean races, I must say, but still we carry on as we've got a nice little lead on the Jag, as it did seem to slow up at one of those corners, whether it crashed or just didn't take it very well. It was after that long straight where we have to go into that chicane section, and that's actually pretty difficult to judge, that corner, as again hitting the barrier for probably the second or third time in this race. Really gets me PGR. I can never seem to get over this barrier thing when I take the corner too tightly, but we are probably halfway through the second lap, or maybe not quite yet. Coming through this more technical section, thinner part of the track, with the tight corners, which this car doesn't really like too much. You've really got to make sure it doesn't start kicking out that back end, but he is still with us. He's definitely caught up through these corners. We come down this straight and we've got to hug this left hand side, and this is a difficult corner to take. You've really got to flip-flop the car right then left, making sure not to power slide too much, not to lose too much speed. But that being said, it can be beneficial to take that a little bit slower and smoother, that corner, than trying to rush it and power sliding into the barrier, which does tend to happen if you go too quickly around there. Braking a little bit before that crest. As you see, there's 2 levels of braking there, where you change the level, different level of the track. And he is still with us, this Jag, just under a second behind, 8 tenths. So we've got to try and lose him best we can, or if he stays at that distance, that's okay as well. But he is coming back for some revenge on us. Yeah, I'd say the F40 corners better than the Jag, but power slides way more, so probably evens out on how quickly you can drive these round the corners, really. But I prefer having that more nimble feel of the F40 and having to control the power sliding rather than just having that sort of boat-like feel of the Jag. So I'm undecided whether I'm going to use that in any of the races, but we'll see how we do. Of course, I'm only using the cars that I think you can do in Platinum, and I'll use them if I think we can do the events, you know, just to broaden the series a little bit, to use different cars. But you know, if you're going for Platinum, F40 or F50 every day of the week are your choices to go through, depending on your driving style, I guess. But he caught right up to us on that corner before the straight, but we managed to do that little difficult section after the straight better than he did, and again doing exactly the same thing on the first lap. I will take that corner right one day, but it's not going to be in this race, and losing a lot of time, but luckily the Jag seemed to slow up as well at some point there, which means we still maintain the lead and across the line in first. So a bit of a weird street race, that one. We got ahead early on, and Jag never really got into that overtaking opportunity, even if we crashed, or even when we crashed, should I say. But that's 3 races down, which is very nice. And we've got a 1-on-1 now in Chicago. So all 4 races have been in Chicago in this episode. Doesn't usually happen that, but I'm going to use the Porsche GT2 for this race, and the reason is we were actually against the Porsche 959, which is the other Porsche you can unlock. This one's obviously a starter car, and I'll just prove how slow this car is. So we start off behind it, having to back out there just because it's better to take the racing line on this corner than trying to overtake it. And yeah, this GT2 is not amazingly quick in a straight line. I mean, it's pretty decent in the class, it's average. But this 959 is the slowest accelerating one in the class, I'd say. I'm pretty sure the GT40 is actually a little bit quicker in a straight line, but we'll show you here. Not doing those corners brilliantly, but look how quickly we're catching him up. Having to brake a little bit again to keep the racing line. Coming around this swooping right hand corner onto the straight, and now we will show the speed difference here. Able to slingshot past him. And this Porsche is not the quickest in the class, and we're still doing this other Porsche for speed, which is a bit unfortunate really, because it does handle very well, that Porsche 959. So it's really not competitive enough, unfortunately. Possibly on the really tight circuits it might be able to do alright, but even so, on any sort of straight you're going to lose all the time that you made during the corners, and you're going to lose it on the straights. So fortunately it's not the car to use. And this GT2 is not too bad, to be honest. A little bit tail happy, like the GT3 was in the Track Special series. Not as planted as the other Porsches, but it's a nice little car to drive, so I thought I'd use that. That's the first time I've used a starter car, I'm pretty sure, in this series, the Road to Platinum series, but that's an easy Platinum medal. We shouldn't have any difficulties with that. And that's going to be the end of this episode, guys. So we've done 4 in this class, or in this series, and we've got 2 1-on-1s, a timed run and a cone challenge in the next episode. So I look forward to that. So I hope you enjoyed, guys. If you did, please like and subscribe if you need for more content, and I'll see you in the next episode.